tonight's going to be a really unique conversation because this is an audience of family and friends. So that's a very special kind of audience.
Yeah.
And there's an intimacy here with all of us. Many of you are Nadine's nearest and dearest and were part of her team and long supporters of her work. And
we got a few newbies in here too.
And a few new people that are now friends.
Yeah.
And it will also be unique because this isn't just your classic author, moderator kind of talk, but Nadine and I are close friends. And we're going to be right in our element tonight, just talking in the way we do, which is going deep. And these kinds of questions and answers may never happen again in a podcast or an interview because it's a bit of an unusual chemistry here. And this gathering, this configuration of people is never going to happen again. I always think that's so special about a live event. We are only going to be here together like this once. It can't be repeated. So that's very precious. And it's a delight to be here, and it's going to be a delight for all of us. I also want to acknowledge that tonight in the audience is Michael, Nadine's dad.
I just need to check, Dad. Can you hear all right?
Yeah,
good. Okay, just checking the levels are good. It's good. It's good. Yeah.
Loretta, Nadine's mum, and Leroy, Nadine's son.
To bounce her up the back.
And you've all contributed so deeply to this work. And you've supported and encouraged Nadine to arrive at this moment. I'm already getting emotional.
I know. We've both been crying all day. We had a tea ceremony to try and settle our nerves. And then we both came out and was like, whoa, this is like birthing, man. This is really fun. You know, I love the stage.
The playlist is like, when's the baby coming? Anyway, I know how proud you all are of her, so thank you. It's special that you're here. Okay, I'm going to start with a bio, which is always weird, but let's do that.
Yeah.
For over 20 years, Doula Nadine Richardson has supported tens of thousands of mothers and partners with the insights and information needed to reclaim their birth experience. Nadine Richardson is a pioneer in childbirth education and the leading authority in birth preparation. She Births is endorsed by obstetricians, midwives and families across Australia and internationally. Nadine advocates for more physiological births and champions integrative care, whatever unfolds, to support beautiful births and experiences. She Births is the world's first scientifically verified childbirth program. That's huge. So I wanted to just read this line that I loved in the book. It's a very simple line, but just to sort of set us up for the night, because we've all got very different stories, very different backgrounds. It's this: every single one of us has arrived here through the incredible power of another's body. I'm just going to read that again because I love it so much. Every single one of us arrived here through the incredible power of another's body. I feel like that line is the great equalizer, you know? Because birth is so big and it's about so much more than just getting a baby out. And we're all in it. And I think that's why it can be so emotional. That's why we've been crying all day, because it's got this, you know, when you talk about birth, you've also got you're sort of dealing with death as well. And there's so much to the great mystery. Okay. So I want to tell you a little bit about how Nadine and I met, to give it a bit of context. So about 10 years ago, I didn't know Nadine, and I'd heard about She Births, the course, and it was the best course. So my husband and I went to do it. And as I was listening to her speak, I was like, I want her to be my doula. I mean, I didn't even know what a doula did at that point, but I just wanted her. And I was too shy to ask her after class. So my husband went and asked, and she was like, I'm really busy. And I've got so much on. And no, I don't think so. And, he came back to tell me, and I was like, oh. Then we bumped into her another time, and again he asked, and she was like, oh, what's the date? Oh, it's a bad time. December, it's so busy. And
treat them mean. It's a strategy.
It's a technique.
No, it wasn't. It really wasn't.
But I guess she felt a bit bad. She was like, look, let's have a coffee. Let's have a walk. So we met in Bondi on this Sunday, and we walked. We walked to Bronte. I'm like, 30 weeks pregnant, and we're just like...
She didn't stop. We didn't stop talking and walking the whole time.
And we talked and talked and talked and talked, and we hit Bronte, and she was like, so, when do we start? And I don't know, do you remember that conversation?
I do. I remember going, wow, you can really do hills. Like, it was very impressive how fit these Bondi mums can be, But yeah, we just had such a beautiful conversation, and it was the beginning of our friendship. And for me, it was really clear that I was your doula already, It was such an honour to hold space for you. And yeah, you have then also held space for me in the birthing of this book. And I think that's, probably why it is so emotional. In creating something new, you need to really be held in that process. And yeah, it was really profound. But I do remember what we spoke about. Are you going to tell them?
We spoke about so much. We spoke about, awakening and spirituality and psychedelics and medicine and...
Favourite topics.
Cults.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about cults because weirdly both of us had been in a lot of cults, and we shared that, which is quite weird to meet someone's like, me too. At the time I thought it was quite random, like that we were talking about cults.
Yeah.
Like, oh, how did we get onto this? But what was happening, each one of us was sort of having this experience of like, oh, I reclaimed my mind too. And the other one was like, me too. I reclaimed my mind out of that too. And now I think in the conversation of birth, which is so much about reclaiming the mind.
Yeah, that's right.
It's really quite fascinating that that's where we started.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you've got a chapter in your book called Claiming Your Own Mind.
Yeah, I know. I think it's a really cool chapter too. It comes after the body. It's so important to understand the power of our bodies and what's orchestrating birth and all the mind-blowing facts that the majority of people just don't know, and so many new things that I learned came into that book. But claiming your own mind is just a more and more important chapter as time goes on in this culture, and it's really disturbing birth at the moment. The infiltration of our psyches with fear and negativity and the dopamine drains of social media. Like, it's really impacting how we think of our bodies and our births. And, I really have noticed over the last 20 years in my work that you would think that people are coming into she births, more ready to get this party started because they've got more information, but actually they're coming in more afraid to the point where it just started to feel about sort of like 8 years ago, like this collective chronic phobia just building. This is, so it's before COVID, but it definitely was with the advent of the Black Mirror, and the access to footage and phones and stories. And yeah, it's really infiltrated people's minds.
What do you think the greatest fear? Is there a common theme around like this, or is it just kind of
I think
everywhere.
it might be a chronic anxiety that people, that's what the stats, I suppose, are saying around mental health. There's just this underlying anxiety and this feeling of exhaustion and feelings of loneliness, and that's really not helpful, to motherhood and to birth. So with the brain, being so incredibly plastic during pregnancy and birth and those 2 years postpartum, and the new science that we have around that, the fMRIs of the female brain, it shows what profound changes are happening, which only shows how plastic the brain is and therefore how vulnerable we are at that time to negativity. So it is so important that we protect the sanctity of our own minds, not to paint sunny pictures or put icing over caca, because birth hurts the majority of the time and it's work. But we need to, stay away from the anxiety building that comes primarily through scrolling, I imagine. I'm not sure. Don't you all think? Probably.
You say here in the book, I really liked this too, the claiming of your own mind. The birth of your child is a prime opportunity to explore what's in the attic of your mind and what needs to be thrown out or kept. This is not just about repeating affirmations. It's about bravely and honestly interrogating your unconscious beliefs.
So now we're going to a deeper level.
Yeah.
Yeah, now we're going into the deeper stuff and unpacking those deep beliefs and how we perceive ourselves and our own sense of agency and what we've inherited through our family line and through culture, because that can all come to play in the confluence of factors that inform our birth experience. It may not, but it might. It might be how we relate to our bodies. It might be our relationship with our sexuality. It might be our relationship with our partner. They can all kind of be little hurdles and hiccups along the way of birth's physiological unfolding. It requires such a surrender and such a sense of safety for this wonderful hormonal orchestration to happen that it can get interrupted by many things inside us and around us as well.
I want to get into that more later, actually. I found this book so compassionate, so generous, so intelligent, so wise. And, there's probably never been such a comprehensive, practical, holistic, evidence-based guide to birthing. And you share empowerment. It's such an invitation into the work of life. That's the beautiful thing you bring to this. Before you get married, and if you're having a big wedding, I feel like I compare this a little bit to how you work. All the prep for the wedding and the wedding and the wedding and the wedding and the wedding, and then you get married and it's like, oh my God, there's a marriage. I forgot to think about that.
Such a good
because the party
analogy.
Person's just preparing you for the party or for whatever. And you can just prepare for a birth.
Yeah.
You can just do the course that prepares you for the breathing and all the practical
list of
stuff.
what to take and how to set up
and
your
the
nursery.
Bag and
Oh my God, I could fall asleep now.
But then there's this whole thing. Then you have a baby, and then there's your life with this baby.
Yeah.
And this is the beautiful work that you took me through, So, and I feel that this book is a little bit like holding your hand again. As I read it, I was remembering, you're just speaking so intimately to the reader.
And that's how I really wanted it. And there's so many people to thank in the writing of the book and in the crafting of this book and the editing. And Jane is here from Murdoch, and she's a legend, and she has the most amazing team, primarily of women, who helped make this book and into that and allowed me to retain that voice and that feeling. I wanted you to feel like we were in the lounge room together and we were having lots of doula sessions. And the reason I wrote the book is because I just got too much to say, I can't get it all across in an online course or in a one-day masterclass or in podcasts. The book is so intimate, and I think we want that privacy sometimes when we're feeling our own fears and coming up against our self-limiting beliefs of what's possible, or the conversations we might need to have with our family and our partners. Like, it really helps to feel that quiet time as you read the book. I just find the intimacy of reading is a very powerful thing. And I'm really glad that you felt that. Other people have said that too.
I really felt that. And so tell us about the role of the doula. Because in a way, this book is like that doula walking with you from beginning and beyond.
Yeah.
I won't say end because there is no end. There's just a beyond. What is the role of the doula?
The role of the doula primarily is the witness and the holder. And yes, we bring practical support, and we bring education, and we bring information. And what else do we bring, ladies? Like hands-on and, the toolkit. But we're really witnessing you in your progress along the whole beautiful evolutionary rite of passage. And I think that's the most key thing that we've lost, particularly for our mothers. And it doesn't go on long enough. Like, even today we were unpacking your second birth and postpartum, and I was like, oh God, I wish I'd been there for you, like, longer. But it's impossible. Like, one person can't be there that whole time in that postpartum. But we try, and we're really there to show you how wonderful you are and how extraordinary you are, because everybody who is birthing, no matter what that birth is or what that outcome is frigging amazing in my eyes, and it should be in everybody's eyes. They're just doing the best they can, and that's enough, and that's wonderful, and that should be celebrated, because you're facing fear and you're doing hard things, and that really needs a few high fives along the way. And ritual and honouring, that to me is like, that is restoring the sacredness of birth again. Yeah.
So when you begin with a woman and you're doulaing, where do you begin? What are the cues that you're taking?
Well, you go for a long walk and you talk about cults. What
cues are you taking from her? Is it always, do you sort of start in the similar way, or are you really just mapping her?
Yeah, mapping, wondering. I think Kylie and I have spoken over the years. It's just like, birth will always surprise you. Women will always surprise you. So always holding that there's going to be like a wild card in the room at some point. But really, the first thing that I'm looking for is like, is she up for doing some work? Like, is she into the juicy, like, psychological excavation? And does she want to be witnessed through that? And that's the doulaing dynamic, and that's all. The willing woman, I suppose, is the way Rhea Dempsey calls it. And I am interested in the weeds that come up, like the fears and doubts that come up along the way. But mostly, we might address those, but we're watering the garden. We're allowing her as the flower to grow. And the more you give attention to the flower and the beauty, the more it grows, the more it shines, and the more powerful she is. I mean, people have said, like, there's some soul mamas in the room, and I've had some dads, like, stop me in the streets of Bondi, and they're just like, what have you done to those women? And I'm like, yeah, they're kind, but they're fierce. Like, they're, unfuckwithable. That's another word that I think of. Yeah, they've got strength, they've got chutzpah, but they're kind and compassionate too.
And can you tell where fear sits in the body? Like, how can you tell where fear sits in the body of each woman, or are you tuning into that individually, or do you find that there's a common space for women? And I'm also curious about where fear sits in the body for the partner, because even though you birth, you're birthing with your own body, the body of the birthing partner or the partner is also in that space, like that energetic body is holding its own fears, and it's affecting the landscape. Can you, like, are you working with that as well?
It's so important that partners have some form of preparation and solid education for birth and have learnt some tools and skills. Hello. I've learnt some, skills to be able to practically support, but they've got to understand why they're doing what they're doing and what's driving labour. So understanding the hormonal orchestration allows them to not just do the massage like that, to really come in with presence and be able to connect with their partner.
Oh.
There's a lot of that at the beginning, but towards the end of massaging, understanding it's about oxytocin and endorphins and really the ultimate safety of the nervous system that allows the birth to unfold. So yeah, fear is felt in all different places in the body, and fear for sure sits in the cervix for sure, and fear can get projected into this space and it will impact a woman's ability to open because it's a vulnerable private space, that part of our body that opens, it's that law of sphincters, they're shy, and we need safety 100%. And that's why I've written so much about the nervous system and written a lot about the nervous system from a female perspective, not just from the classical fight or flight versus, relaxation response, but about how the social nervous system is our most ancient part of the nervous system and how we function. And we're always reading faces and we're always looking for safety. And women in particular are much more sensitive to their social environment and people around them, particularly authority figures, and particularly when you're in a neuroplastic state like pregnancy and labour. So it's really hard to claim one's own mind in the throes of labour as well. So we're trying to use pregnancy as a time to build up that sense, that locus of control, that inner locus of control, as well as the woman's interoception, that awareness of her body, so that she can interpret the pain differently and she can also have that sense of agency. And the partner has to be on board with that because there's times when she just can't speak and she shouldn't have to speak. Someone else should speak for her that she trusts, the confidant, the doula, the partner, 100%.
I wanted to, as you were talking, just the contents of this book is so delicious and so, it just shows how you doula, but I'm just going to read a few out because it's just, reading out titles. Your amazing body, the uterus, the nervous system, the mind-body connection, the stories we tell ourselves, claiming your own mind, matrescence and the parenting brain, the power of making space, the stages of labour, and then all the, transition, second stage, all the more technical stuff.
But the stages of labour, I wrote, I always teach that after we've done mind, body and hormones, and now we have such a huge amount of knowledge around matrescence, which is so empowering because the brain is really wiring itself towards empathy and instinct and intuition, and you can actually start leaning into that potential in pregnancy, and that will give you greater strength and greater agency. But the stages of labour I wrote, and this was the beauty of writing the book because you get to discover new things, new research that had to be woven in, and so much from the perspective of the baby, starting with the baby's journey into the world, and which we just so often don't think about. Is the baby involved in this process? Well, actually, they are involved in this process. Did they have a sense of agency around when they arrive in the world? How does that happen? Well, they send a precursor to the placenta, and then the placenta creates this huge surge of estrogen and progesterone in the body, which starts to soften the cervix. And then the baby also sends out oxytocin into the mother's bloodstream as well. So it's not just the mother beginning labour or synthetic oxytocin beginning labour, but the baby is saying when they're ready. And we think it has something to do with their respiratory system, and no one fully knows. There's still an element of mystery as to when that occurs. But fear's got to be out of the way as well to allow for these things to happen in general.
We've got transforming birth, the practical tools. helpful actions for every birth, nourishing lifestyle choices for birth and postpartum, creating your birth team, creating your birth plan, intervention, birth trauma healing, grief in pregnancy, birthing in country, birth trauma. Beyond the good girl is a wild woman. That's the last.
So I've heard.
You know, this, I think we met like 7 years ago. I actually clocked it today. I looked up the notes. 7 years ago, almost to the date, that we sat at a cafe and you told me the idea of this book. And I was like, wow, you know, and we started like mapping the skeleton, and I've got all the notes of the chapter here. What could it be, you know? And at that time, you were referring to the book as like a birth as a guide to awakening. And this word, we kept throwing around this word. It's such a beautiful word, awakening. I think it's such a beautiful word. And, you know, you didn't put awakening in the title, but this is still a book about awakening in so many ways. For me, that's how I read it.
Because we want to sell it in Big W.
It's too poetic.
Because everyone is awakening, even if they don't know it. And we're all on that spectrum of evolution. It's all
spectrum
happening.
of awakening.
Yes, yes.
Well, what is awakening to you? I mean, what is the inner work of birth?
Okay.
I mean, obviously your book is, you know, has all the science and the practicality, but your work always, as I have experienced it, you're sort of working to free the body so the body can be as available as possible to the other work, you know, the inner work. And somehow your work always leads back to self, you know, through the tools.
To me, it's not like an education, birth education, unless there's some education of self and some returning back to who we truly are. So we can have information, but that kind of keeps us on a shallow level a lot of the time. But if we have like depth and education and transmission and wisdom and anecdotes, then we see ourselves in these stories. We feel and know who we are through birthing. And I talk a lot about how birth for me was an awakening to stillness and to silence. And so I didn't know that birth was really like my biggest yoga experience, really. And even though I'd been doing years of yoga since I was 16, so a long time, for me it was a profound awakening to who I truly was. And from that place, I then saw the world very differently. And so awakening to me is about realizing more of who we are. And as a mother, that allows me to have the space. I think you can. Yeah, I think you can. You can keep the status quo. Yeah, for sure. But we don't ever fully know what's going on inside someone's world and reality. And so, but we ultimately know that the universe is expanding and all people are evolving. Yeah.
Do you think it's getting harder to do this kind of inner work, or is birth getting harder?
It's definitely getting harder. Yeah. Like the C-section rate has doubled in 25 years. The induction rate has doubled in 20 years. It's now at 50%, the amount of first-time mums are medically induced, don't go into labour naturally. The C-section rate is now 40%, probably more, because our stats are a bit behind. And that's astronomical. I mean, that's 4 times what is recommended as safe by the World Health Organization. And then we have 30% of the women in New South Wales describing their birth as traumatic. And within that cohort, 70% of that trauma is what we call preventable trauma. So 30% is coming from, terrible, traumatic, scary things that happen, crazy preeclampsia or certain, diagnoses and so on, emergency procedures. But 70%, the majority is coming from the way women are being treated and spoken to, not necessarily what is happening, whether someone has an epidural or not, but the way they're being treated inside the system, which is really, really sad. And induction plays a big part, I think, in that. There's a huge amount of trauma that can come as a result of medical trauma, medical induction. And, yeah, it's often not sort of presented in an honest way. So, yes, it's harder.
Yeah.
It is harder. And so we have the chronic sort of fear and culture getting stronger, getting louder. We have extremism as well in birthing, you know, like the extreme sports kind of version on Instagram, you know, the radicalization that gets picked up in the algorithm, that gets really loud. And then we have, of course, other people just saying, like, this is crazy. I'm going to try and opt out and try and control things so that I feel safe. So everyone's trying to find the way that they feel safe, but often they're coming into that with funny agendas as well, distorted agendas.
So that leads me to, I guess you're saying it can affect matrescence. Can you explain? Not everyone's heard necessarily the word matrescence. It's another beautiful word. Can you explain what that is for us?
Yeah, it's the transformational process of becoming a mother that happens on a physical, psychological, emotional, and spiritual level. So when you hear that, you're like, oh, no one can opt out, right? Because you are going to change. The brain is going to change.
Yes, true. Yeah.
And so, yeah, the 4 lobes, the grey matter is shrinking by around sort of 5%, and then the white matter in between those lobes is expanding, which means that it's looking for new ways to wire up, to see the world differently. And so the limbic system is changing, and we're really starting to become primed for non-cognitive cues. So like the wild element, the animistic element is part of who we are, really, because we need to take care of another being. But that also means that we have a lot of greater empathy for the world, and that creates a lot of anxiety. And we can often really miss our child, but then feel completely flooded and overwhelmed by having them as well, because we're not raising our child in a village where that load is shared. So it's full of paradoxes. And I think the greatest issue with matrescence is the loneliness. I mean, it's blown me away. Again, another thing over 20 years is meeting with mums and just hearing that their biggest issue during matrescence is this sense of loneliness. Yeah. And I don't feel like it truly was like that 20 years ago. I actually don't. On the streets of Bondi, it was a little bit lonely. You know, I had to drive all the way to Kylie's house, to Marrickville. There was just the 2 of us with babies at that time. But I didn't feel lonely. I wasn't searching for more than what I had as well. And I think there's an element, again, there of social media creating this sense of needing more, don't have enough, and not connecting to true quality experiences. There's something there. Yeah.
I'm big on loneliness. I mean,
I know. You wrote a beautiful poem called The Loneliness is Deep.
Did.
Yeah.
Loneliness is interesting because on the one hand, you know, it's quite serious. A mother feeling alone can lead to some very dark pathways that need a lot of support and a lot of help. But this sort of shooing away of this sort of fear around the loneliness, and like if the village is that, you know, you shouldn't. I feel like the loneliness is a part of the initiation.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not a thing to be eradicated. It's like it's a thing that's really leading you, like ultimately everything must be faced alone.
Absolutely.
You know, we can be held, we can have the right containers, but there's something extremely profound and transformative about facing that grand aloneness.
100%. And just as you said it, I just, you know, remembered having our beautiful midwife, and she really set me up to enjoy the alone times. And the most alone times are at night, you know, when you're up and you're feeding. And she's like, it's such a sacred time, you know. And it just always sat with me. Like, it's so special, those night times that it's just you and your baby. It's so intimate. And yeah, yes, you just want a shower on your own, a poo on your own, and all those sorts of things. And you want some space at points. But it's a dance, like you say. But sinking into that loneliness is healing.
I mean, there's aloneness and then there's loneliness.
Yeah.
And it's a fine line, knowing when you've gone maybe too far and when you need to call out. But I just think it's such a defining factor of the human experience, you know, for these transformative experiences to face them in that way.
That's true. And I suppose I used to, I don't know if I should say this, but anyway, I'll give it a go. You know, I used to say to women, no matter where you're birthing, because we know that like only 0.8% of the population give birth at home, right, in Australia, which is a very small number. And when you're in places like Bondi and you're in places like Byron, you can often think it's more like, 25% are giving birth at home. But it's really small, as the same amount of women give birth on the side of the road as have a home birth.
Wow, really?
And so I used to say to people, look, no matter where you're birthing, like we're going to include everybody in the she birth space, like whether you're birthing public, private, OB, birth centre, home birth, whatever. You still have to give birth as confidently as though you're given a birth at home. You know, you still got to be as confident as that woman and willing to go there on your own. And a lot of the beginnings of our labour are on our own. You know, you really want that space to get into your rhythm and to allow the body to go into that space. Yeah.
Absolutely. What about, you know, speaking about this matrescence and loneliness, being a part of matrescence and all the things that, you know, like adolescence, like you were saying, can you opt out? But it's like you can't opt out of adolescence. Matrescence is similar to that. Is there such a thing as disrupted matrescence, whether it's through trauma or birth trauma or a tragedy in the family or a diagnosis? The kinds of things that can happen, I mean, it's probably more common than not. I don't know, but what happens there?
Yeah, I mean, trauma is the disruption, 100%, which you know well. And that takes more time and more support and more love to heal. And I suppose you and I were talking on the way here, you know, can we make every birth beautiful? No, we can't. We can't control all the factors on the day. It's impossible. We can, you know, prepare for all and expect the best is the way to go. But certainly we don't ever know what cards are going to be dealt to us with birth or in postpartum. And because it is a rite of passage, absolutely nobody gets off with some form of challenge. No one gets off scot-free in the perinatal period, whether that's a baby that doesn't sleep and your nervous system feels really fried from that. You could have the rock star birth, whatever it is. But again, we have to have more resources for our mums to be held and loved and supported, to claim their own mind back, to make their own meaning, to find their holding. But within that, there will be the paradox of aloneness, because grief is always alone. You can share in it sometimes, but there is always an alone element to it. And when I set up the Matrescence embodiment programs with the beautiful Leah, the first meditation that we run is holding the paradox, you know, opening the heart and holding the paradox. What is the moment of greatest joy been in your week, and what has been the moment of greatest angst or pain or anxiety or worry, and can you hold both? And Jung, I think, spoke about that. We've got two psychiatrists here, but I don't know if they're Jungian, to just say. But I think he said, you know, maturity is delaying gratification and being able to hold the paradox. And they've been big teachers for me, you know, having patience and holding the paradox, for sure. Because then we're out of the mind. Now we're in the place of connection. Because you're feeling my feeling different, right? If I can hold the paradox in myself, I can hold the paradox in you, and we can come together. Yeah.
There's so much to that. There's so much to this interrupted matrescence part. I don't know, I almost don't know where to go with it, but I know that there's, you know, maybe people in this room, people listening, whose, you know, whose journey of motherhood, you know, was really disrupted, maybe even through stillbirth or all sorts of things, and the matrescence journey still continues.
Oh, yeah.
Even after something like that.
Yeah, it does.
And
You're always a mother, 100%, even if you've had the shortest pregnancy and pregnancy loss. And we know that through the science as well, through mitochondrial, like the DNA that carries down through the mother's line. That DNA gets tracked all the way back through everybody's body, all the way back to the one woman, mitochondrial Eve, who's actually the mother of every single person on the planet right now. You know, she was discovered 2.5 years ago. And yes, there were other women on the planet, but this one had enough daughters that went on to have enough to have all of us.
What do you mean? Tell me more about this.
Yeah,
what do you mean?
Did you not read the grant application I put in for the play?
No, I didn't read it. I was doing my own grant. I signed off on it. Tell me more.
She's called Mitochondrial Eve, and this mitochondrial DNA doesn't mutate as fast as other forms of DNA.
Okay.
So therefore, it can be traced back. So, you know, from my 3 pregnancies, I have the DNA of all of those children inside my body. There's a slight crossover, even though our bloods don't mix through the placenta. The placenta has these little bouncers on the door that only let through the nutrients and so on, and the glucose that the baby needs. But blood generally doesn't pass between the two, but some DNA does cross over. And we call this then maternal fetal microchimerism. So inside, they know, like women, you know, well past pregnancy will have the DNA of their children inside their bones.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty profound, isn't it?
It's incredible.
I didn't want to spoil the play, but now we have.
So that you sort of opened up something about that I've heard you talk about, the mother wound.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Tell me more. I mean, how much of all this, the way we approach matrescence, and how much of that is to do with our own mothers? Tell me about the mother wound. It's a big one, but...
Yeah. I was thinking the other day, why do we have the mother wound and the father wound? You know, well, because we've got a mother and a father, and because culture can do better. And because we're always on this process of evolution and doing better. So our wounds are our greatest gifts and opportunities to heal and to grow, in my experience. So the mother wound is really everybody's longing to be held. And so many of us feel like we have not been in our modern world. We're too busy. There's always times. I think I smothered Leroy for quite a few years. I was determined to never let him cry. But I know he has moments where he felt he wasn't held by the mother. And so for me, I'm speaking on his behalf, but he can tell you later. But I think mothers and daughters, fathers and sons, there's definitely more charge, in my experience, in those lines, in those dynamics. But we're here to heal and we're here to grow. And that's part of being able to see the authenticity in our children, is healing our own lacks and being able to give more to them. Does that make sense?
It does. It just made me think of this. I've got so many quotes that I was going to read, but it's all too interesting here live. But I just remembered this one. From that moment of landing and meeting, there will come along a long list of amazing firsts. First hug, first smell of your baby's skin, first smile, first giggle. What an opportunity it is to parent, to open our hearts and devote our time and attention to the well-being of another. Alongside the beginnings, there will be endings, the last kiss at the bus stop, the last snuggle in bed together. We only share about 16 summers with our children before they're off with friends in cars. I invite you to enjoy all those waves together. They are transient, but they are yours.
Yeah. So that's the closing of the stages of labour. It's like as you're feeling those waves, the pain, and then the space, and then, you know, the pressure, and then the opening, and yeah, can you think about the waves, the coming and the letting go?
I mean, I also think it reminds me, like, you know, the She Births course. You know, it's not the kind of course that you come out, you're gonna have your perfect birth. It prepared me for however my birth was going to unfold. But something that you put a lot of emphasis on was the moment of meeting. And I just found that so special. Like, what kind of place will you be in? It's almost like all in preparation for you to be at your most embodied for that moment of meeting. And can you tell us a bit about that moment of meeting? Because you talk about it so beautifully.
Yeah, I think that moment of meeting, to me, just blew me away. Like, how profound it was. And that was seeing Leroy, feeling and knowing who he was in that moment. And that could only happen through me being present and conscious of that moment. And I really believe I put that down to my midwife being there, and I put that down to my dad paying for my midwife because we were broke. And I remember, like, just not being happy with the care that I was getting. Changing hospitals, changing birth centres. They were always knew someone new. They misdiagnosing this, putting me on antibiotics when it's not that. And I was like, oh, I heard about this thing. You can hire your own midwife. And you said, Dad, okay, I'll be for your midwife, you know, it's women's business. And I think she brought just a sense of sacredness and reverence to that meeting without making a big deal of it, you know. And once he was born, he needed a bit of like suction and a little bit of oxygen, but she didn't take him away from me and do it over there. She put him right next to me, and she brought anything she needed to us. And so he didn't leave my eyes. And I knew in that moment who he was. Wow. And to me, it's been the foundation of everything. He was pretty powerful. It was like I'm not going to tell any more stories because I'll embarrass him, but there's more stuff in the book.
Absolutely. Did writing this book, speaking of, you know, wounds, and did writing this book heal something for you?
For sure. Yeah, like I think the first 2 years was like imposter syndrome, coming up against that. And
imposter as in I'm not really
I'm not an author. I still don't think of myself as a writer or an author. Yeah. It's just something that I did in order to facilitate this mission of making everyone more informed and making everyone really their own birth educator. I've given everything I can in the book. Yeah. And we're all birth educators, you know, whether you're having children or not, whether you know anyone right now who's pregnant or not, you are actually educating about birth. And the more you know, the more love you can share, the more empowerment you can share. So, yeah, there was a huge amount of healing that went on. You know, I think mothering itself was very healing. But, yeah, the book has been a profound healer for all things. Yeah.
And if the book was a birth, what kind of birth do you think it was?
It was kind of probably a little bit like Leroy's, actually. It was a bit more straightforward. It was a lot longer. And there was been some corners at the end which are not as comfortable as a soft cranial bones that come through. But, it's a 3-year gestation, right, of writing. But you and I spoke 7 years ago. And I suppose it's in, you know, union with the divine, really. For me, I just had like a visual of what this book was, and I felt really clearly, I could feel it. There weren't words, but I could just see it and feel it, what had to be birthed. And now I feel like I'm unwrapping that book and now opening a little Pandora's box of powerful birth educators around the world through it. And I've just had these 3 very strong images that have just taken me through. And I think the last year has been the hardest. Having more than 300, scientific references within the book is like total ball breaker, I have to say. You think, something about birth, it's still extremely hard to crystallize that and to hold the complexity of research and bring that into tangible forms for people to use. You just read a research paper and it can often just like, oh yeah, that's nice, breathing works. Okay, but how? Like, really, how do we apply this to the decision-making processes, say, around induction? There's a lot of interesting research around that. A lot of it's conflicting. How will we make those decisions? How will you do it? How are you going to have an embodied sense of consent around this process so that you don't have regret, so that you don't feel trauma, and that you can speak up when needed? So I think the book has allowed all of that, and in me helping other people find their voices, I suppose I've found mine too. Yeah. Been a long, hard birth, but worth it.
Posterior, sounds posterior to me.
Compound posterior presentation, for sure.
Can I read yourself to yourself in your book Postpartum that you're in now?
Yeah.
Birth work is life work. Birthing yourself anew requires that you let go of who you were while meeting your most essential self. Life is happening for you, not to you. There is so much to discover. I'm there with you in spirit, as are all women who have come before and all the women who will come after. I know you've got this.
Yeah, that's right. Life is happening for you, not to you.
Yeah.
Lean in. Yeah, 100%. Thanks.
Congratulations, my love.
Thank you. Thank you. We made it.
I did. We're going to open up to some questions.
You haven't all read the book, right? It's so hard.
Do you have a favourite quote?
A favourite
Quote?
Yes, is this
I
something
think
you
the
will have?
conclusion, the introduction and the conclusion were really locked in for a long time, and then just 10% tweaked and edited, in the final moments. They're my favourites. I really enjoyed the chapter on sexuality because I don't get to teach that. There's so much that we want to teach, right, in birth ed, and so much we want to share as a doula, but the sexuality chapter just blew my mind, the power of grandparents present, but, the power of vibrators to reduce, pain perception. The fact that, when you have a water birth, you're much more likely to have a better sex life with your partner after. Very small study, but seems pretty important,
Wow.
Is that due to the fact that less people are putting their hands down there, which often happens with the water birth? Women tend to have more agency around that. So there were some really interesting pieces of research that I've kind of woven into that chapter. And nipple stimulation, even through clothing, such a great tool to help bring about labour, natural forms of induction. Yeah, there was some really interesting stuff around that. And I think a few influencers have read the book, and I did it. Oh, you have to get it, Sandy.
Oh,
There's just lots of really interesting sections at the end, and we called them Go Deeper. So, the book was twice the size. I had to get it all out. And, but the second book, the sort of second book, which was very much about the labyrinth of birth and the portal and the spirituality and the awakening, that really became condensed and is in these sections called Go Deeper at the end of these research papers. And so it's got lots of reflection and processes and journaling and just understanding, like, wow, why do I have more dreams? Well, probably because of the crazy amounts of progesterone that you have right now. Oh, what's a really amazing way to unpack my dreams? And there's like my favorite dream questions in there, which just work every time to show you more about yourself and show that your dreams are guiding you towards meeting your baby and yourself. So I've liked all those bits. Yeah, I like it all. I actually really love reading my own book. I really was scared. I was told by a business coach, don't write a book, just like do this and do that. And he's been really nice at other points, but I was like, I love it. I love it. I'm like reading it in bed going, wow, that's really good. And I really appreciate each word, each sentence, because I said to you when the editing started, I was calling you up and was having a breakdown. I was like, I didn't know it was this much work. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, I'm doing every hack I know under the sun, like to get through, like I'm taking like so many adaptogens and so much coffee. And like, I'd like press the button on the coffee machine, do a sun salute. It was like 4 a.m, press the next button, do another sun salute. Like, how am I going to get through 45-minute timer, roll on the balls so my back don't get a migraine? Like, I was just hacking my way through this. And you said, well, you know how long it takes to sometimes write an Instagram post? And I was like, oh my God. But Jane and her team set me up with like the world's greatest editor, Katya Ariel, who is in Melbourne, but without her, like, there is just no way on God's earth that we would have created such a beautiful, concise and easy to digest. And Julie Mazur Tribe, she doulaed me each week because I needed a little bit of doulaing. I needed somewhere to laugh about this, how hard this was, and be seen as well. And so Julie is also the queen of editing and tidying things up. And just, I think we'll put that in a little breakout box. Yeah. We'll just take out that extra bit about the labyrinth, but you know, I was like, just collect it off the desk, Julie. I don't care. Like, let's just do it. No, I didn't. Because
you divided the book in very specific sort of sections, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What are they? How were you mapping that?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to a She Births course. Like, we talk about the body and building that trust in the body and understanding it. Because when you feel contractions, it really helps to know, like, what's generating those and what is behind those and why we need those, that downward pressure. But to understand, you know, like the pregnant pelvis, like that research paper was fantastic. That's in there in the active birthing session. Like, non-pregnant versus pregnant pelvis in a squatting position, you will get 70% more space lateral and 30% more space front to back in the pregnant pelvis than the non-pregnant. And so actually squatting a little bit throughout your pregnancy can help make more room. Then there's another research paper that says, you know, it's actually more, not just the active birthing positions, but the moving between positions that creates even more space in the pelvis. So, you know, going from the bed to the toilet, you know, things can really start to happen in those moments as well. So it's really empowering information, but that's just the beginning. And then we go the mind, and then we understand the hormones, and then the stages of labour. People think you should start with the stages of labour, but no, you shouldn't. You need to know what's driving those stages, because then you see them differently. And then we move into the deeper, juicier stuff. Yeah. And it's important to talk about, you know, the birth trauma inquiry and how significant that was in New South Wales, how 30,000 women, was that right? 30,000 submitted their stories and spoke up about the trauma they'd experienced, and how we're understanding grooming and coercion inside the sort of systems. And that's a really important thing, that people are switching on to that. Medical misogyny. We're understanding so much more, and people are realising that they have different choices and they can speak up. That's in there too. There's so much in there. I liked the grief section. I liked talking about miscarriage. I think that's really important. Really beautiful miscarriage story from Lisa in Edinburgh. So you asked me where fear sits in the body. That can be in multiple places, but when I met her on Zoom, I could see her babies in the field.
Wow.
Yeah, wanting to speak. And that hasn't happened before. And she was reaching out because she'd had a great first birth. She'd had 2 traumatic miscarriages, and she was really scared of birthing again. And she'd lost that trust in her body. She'd need multiple D&Cs and hadn't had great experiences in the system. And so for us, it was about reconnecting to the body. She wanted, like, help me get back into my body. Because, you know, they were both up there and very afraid and not wanting to connect. And I said, oh, it's actually not about getting back into the body. Like, it's time to talk to the babies. Like, and then she has these really amazing dreams after our session, did a bit of journaling and had the most beautiful birth and felt that previous baby was going to be there. And literally she gave birth on the day that she had lost the last one. Yeah, a year to the date. And that's only like a tiny bit of her story, but it's very powerful when the veil lifts, you know, between life and death, and it's sacred. It's always sacred. Yeah. Lots of beautiful stories. There's 2 mother mums here tonight. It's Bella and Amelia, who also share their stories in the book, and they just bring so much joy and love. Yeah, it's palpable. It's very powerful stories. Okay, sorry, it's question time. Sorry. Okay, so what have I seen change, either good or bad, in the birth space in 24 years? And if I could broadcast a message. I think I've kind of addressed that. What I've seen is the more fear, more anxiety, and it does seem to be making women experience more interventions. I've seen the system become more... maternal fetal medicine has really developed in lots of great ways, like the testing and scanning, but it's also meant that a lot more women are being labelled. And this is often then the beginning of, I call the cascade of intervention, beginning in the prenatal period. So, you know, the majority of women who are medically induced are diagnosed with gestational diabetes. And those parameters have changed. Those numbers and guidelines have changed over the time. And the problem is that when we have labels, women get shoved down conveyor belts and they don't understand, they get a lot more anxiety and they don't understand that they have choices around, you know, potential forms of assistance, but often they're experienced as intervention. So I think those are the big changes in more depth. Unfortunately, suicide is still the primary reason for death in the perinatal period. That hasn't changed in well over 25 years. That comes, you know, it's leading ahead of postpartum hemorrhage and sepsis and malnutrition. Suicide is still the biggest killer of mothers. And if I wanted to share a mission to the world, yeah, you're all birth educators. Read She Births whether you're pregnant or not, and give it to as many people as you can. I think the brain is taking in information all the time, and we're so ripe and ready, and fear's getting passed down like recipes, you know, and it's toxic. It's not helping. We need to tell people that they can do it, they do have agency, and you can have a beautiful birth, whatever unfolds. If you've got the right tools, the support, and you're values-driven, not just goal-orientated in your approach, which is what it sets up for in the very beginning. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I know you did a lot of research, and I wondered, was there anything throughout this time that you researched and were really shocked by?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned, I suppose, I was really shocked by the sexuality ones, because we don't lean into that. Most women don't want to go into that conversation. Yeah, the matrescence stuff still blows my mind, you know, how much we know about the brain changes and really how nature's just got it orchestrated. I just get mind blown all the time. Like, nature's just got it sorted. Like, the innate wisdom of nature that's moving through us all the time. That's, you know, I used to watch Leroy playing, and you're like, wow, like, I don't have to do anything. Like, he's just like growing, like, and he's showing me I'll take his cue in terms of what he's interested in, and I'll respond to that. Mutual delight is really the foundation of conscious parenting. And absolutely, it's there if you can trust nature and just step in as needed. It's, the whole lot, mind-blowing. It still mystifies me, and it still makes me so happy to work in birth. Yeah.
I'm really interested in how you're going to disseminate the book and how you plan to really get it out there. You were talking about getting it into Walmart or...
No, it is in Big W, isn't it, Jane?
Brilliant.
Is it on the shelves today? Yeah, it's in Big W.
Oh. Yeah, so that big reach to broad audiences, like what's your kind of communication strategy? Because the book does so much. It has the spiritual, but it also has the grounded evidence base.
Yeah.
So it's really an interesting example of trying to talk to
science and soul.
Across, a really broad spectrum of, I guess, ways of understanding life and death and birth.
It is, yeah.
So I just wonder, are you going to go on book tours and travel the world with it, or how are you going to get it out there?
Well, the book tour is small because it takes a lot of hustle. It seems like everyone's like in an echo chamber that doesn't hear about She-Birth's book tours. I don't know. It seems like that. Like reaching out to people and telling them, do you know what's on? It's like, no, but I want to be there. But I hadn't heard about it because everyone's so stuck in their little echo chambers of where they currently are. So I'm not quite sure how it's going to disseminate. I do have a very strong visual of that and a strong feeling around that. And I've spent many years meditating on what can I do with the rest of my life to create the greatest change in this space. And to me, it leads me towards the application that I put in for us and Augusta to work together to create a new work. I'm not going to say what it's called because I might jinx it. So to create a new work, and then around that would be a documentary, and then that would lead to a TV series. Because I think the world changes through moving pictures and stories. And that's how you really get into the subconscious.
It's like a 3-part SBS.
I'm thinking Netflix. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But a doco, like an ABC, SBS doco about this project that we've started designing. And it's very grassroots, and it's a living community project. So it can be moved around and be owned by community. And it's more to do with the reclamation of birth stories.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So you can kind of get where we're leaning there. Yeah. Yeah. And the education will always be needed within that,
Yeah, and activism too.
It is activism,
I hear activism in this, and we haven't really spoken about that. But you are trying to change a system that's pretty locked in, and as you said, is getting more rigid in some ways.
The system is really hard, and I did spend a lot of time after the British Medical Journal came out, knocking on doors, having meetings inside systems, and dealing with larger organisations, and to me, they're just such slow changing dinosaurs, and they're not really that interested in innovation or change, or it's just too hard with the cogs being so big and so slow turning. So we know that it takes 17 years on average for 14% of medical research to land inside a system, but that's only 14%, and that's after 17 years if it's landing at all. So I feel it's better to talk to people. I feel it's better to just give it all away, give it all away. And then we'll just see what's on the other side. So that's also the tears as well. It's I have no idea, really where this is going. I love teaching people. And if people want to become birth educators, you've literally got the guide there to help your sisters. And so I figure there's a guide person, there's a community awakening. I'm not really sure. I'm interested in, once people read it, what they say, what they want, and I'll create it in that dynamic. My dynamic was always here teaching at the beautiful Dharmashala, really immersed with parents, wasn't it, Nat? We were just there, and I would be with women week in, week out, so many women, and immersed in pregnancy and birth and postpartum, and I became a celebrant, so involved in ritual and life and death, and it really created the power of she-births because all the parents were like, oh, you got to have that bit in the birth plan. Like that, the dads would be like, call it, nah, that system didn't listen unless you put that bit in. Like, it's really important. There was such a biodynamic there, but now I have to do a biodynamic sort of thing through social media, which I'm finding pretty hard, to be honest. Yeah, I feel a cultural ADD coming on and a dopamine sort of depression through the last few weeks of working really hard to market the book. So that's a real challenge, 100%. I'm not the happiest person when I'm doing those things. Yeah. So it's really up to all of you to go out and like buy copies for your friends, you know, like, I don't know, I always give books and CDs and to people. So I think it's the perfect gift to give to anyone. Yeah.
We're out of time.
Carly's got one more.
Oh, go for it.
I've just come from Tasmania and working with First Nations mob or women down there, and they were talking about the right to be able to give birth on country.
Yeah.
And so we talk about being the small percentage that get to give birth at home.
Yeah.
I wondered about the stories or research about what it might have been like once upon a time when birth on country.
It's a pretty special section. Yeah. There's actually some really long, beautiful papers that have captured stories from First Nations people sharing how they gave birth and what they utilised. And I've referenced a lot of that in the book. And Dr. Lisa Clegg helped write and edit that part. And we actually have a She Births mum here, Sylvia, who's just been down with the Waminda midwives down the South Coast who have their Birthing on Country program. And the next book launch event is at Birth Time, and I know that their second film is about the Birthing on Country project. So I think, again, films, storytelling will help the advocacy as well.
I was thinking of that scene in Hamnet.
Yeah, the Hamnet scene, right? I know. Connection to the Great Mother. She needed to be on land. She needed to be on country. And to me, yeah, this book wouldn't have been written if I had been living in Bondi. I needed to be barefoot in the mud in Maynarm with the snakes. Yeah.
Nadine, the book is called She Births, Your Practical Guide to a Beautiful Birth. Can you take us out with just what's a beautiful birth?
A beautiful birth is whatever you define it to be. Set it up, create your intention, choose the values that are most important to you and your family. I love bonding and empowering. That's, as a doula, that's the intention that I'm always working with. Tonight, my intention was calm, connected, and joyous. Values will take you further than a goal. Lean into them and really tune in to what really resonates for you, and that will carry you home to your beautiful birth. Thank you so much.
I'm going to end with how we began. Every single one of us arrived here through the incredible power of another's body.
Aho.
Woo! Congratulations. Thank you, everyone, for your presence, support, and contribution. Buy the book. Give it to someone who's planning on having a family, or if you want to support someone who's having a family. There's so many ways to gift this book, and get them signed.
Yes, we're going to do signing now. Down here. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Walk well, safely out, and may the power of birth be with you.
Yes.